The alert hit my phone, a sharp tone that froze the entire conference room. One glance at the security feed and the world I'd spent years protecting tilted. My sister Leia was standing in the middle of my apartment, sunlight glinting off the folders she'd pulled from my safe. She wasn't panicked. She was smiling, holding them up like trophies. I was 300 miles away in a federal building, watching betrayal unfold in real time. My badge hung around my neck, my pulse in my throat. That moment I didn't yell, I didn't rush home, I just stared at the screen and thought, she really believes the rules don't apply to her. So I made one quiet call, the kind that doesn't end with tears but with sirens. Before I tell you what happened when those sirens reached my family's front door, tell me, where are you listening from? So I know I'm not the only one who's learned that sometimes justice has to start at home. When people picture families, they imagine warmth. Mine looked warm from the outside. Too proud. Parents, a golden younger daughter, and me, the quiet one who worked for the government. We took perfect Christmas photos, the kind that made neighbors comment, "You're so lucky to have each other." Luck had nothing to do with it. It was hierarchy dressed as love. I was 30, working long hours at the Treasury department, tracking fraudulent securities across international accounts. I couldn't talk about it. Not the clearances, not the investigations, not even the cases I'd cracked. My parents assumed I shuffled papers in a cubicle. Before I continue the story, tell me first, where did you hear this from? Write it in the comments, because what happens next most people won't believe. Neighbors asked what I did. Mom would smile and say, "Emma keeps the lights on in DC. I never corrected her. Explaining the truth to people who'd already decided I didn't matter felt like explaining color to someone who'd chosen to live blind. Leia was the opposite, light, loud, magnetic. She had a way of filling space until no one else fit. Growing up, she'd borrow my clothes without asking, take credit for my ideas, and get away with it. Because she'd tilt her head, laugh and say, doesn't mind." I minded. I just learned early that pointing it out made me sound jealous. Our parents loved that version of her, charming, ambitious, a future socialite. She'd married young to Grant, a dentist who drove a new SUV every other year. Their house had an open floor plan and a wine fridge, the kind of things Mom mentioned like merit badges. Whenever I visited, Dad would joke, "Maybe one day you'll have a real job and buy a place like this." I'd smile, the same practiced curve I used at federal briefings when senators interrupted me mid-sentence. I wasn't bitter. At least I told myself I wasn't. I'd built a life that meant something. Every folder I touched at work held the weight of national trust. Every password, every clearance test reminded me I carried more responsibility than they'd ever imagine. Still, there were nights I'd sit in my quiet apartment scrolling through their group photos. Captions full of hearts, and feel the same dull ache that started years ago. The kind that comes from being in the picture but never really seen. 2 weeks before it happened, Leia called out of the blue. "You should come home for dinner next Thursday," she said. "We're doing something big, family only." Her tone had that syrupy sweetness she used when she wanted something. I said yes anyway. Maybe a part of me still wanted to believe we could be normal. Maybe I just wanted to stop feeling like a guest in my own family. The night of that dinner, I drove up to my parents' house with the same quiet dread that always came with family gatherings. The driveway was full. Mom's sedan, Dad's truck, Ila's white Range Rover gleaming under the porch light. Through the front window I could already see her moving around the dining room, laughing, radiant like the host of her own show. Inside, the air smelled like rosemary and wine. Mom hugged me too tightly, the way she did when she was nervous. "You made it, honey," she said, glancing at my blazer. "Still dressing like a lawyer, I see." I smiled, set down the bottle of wine I'd brought, and took my seat at the far end of the table. Dinner started, fine banter, gossip, updates on Leia's kids. Then halfway through the meal she cleared her throat. "I actually have some news," she said, eyes flicking toward Grant. "We've made a big investment, college funds for the boys, maybe even a lake house later." Dad beamed. "That's my girl, always thinking ahead." I raised an eyebrow. "Investment? What kind?" Leia smiled, that practiced smirk that never reached her eyes. "You'll see." She reached down beside her chair, and when her hand came back up, it was holding a thick stack of folders. My folders. She stood holding them high enough for everyone to see. "Found your little savings, sis." For a second I thought I'd misheard. Then I recognized the labels, serial numbers, Treasury seals, the exact files that had been in my locked safe. Dad frowned. "Savings? What's that supposed to mean?" "Apparently," Leia said, laughing, "Emma's been keeping a little nest egg tucked away. Old bond certificates, whatever they are, don't worry, nothing illegal, just dormant." She waved them in the air like confetti. Mom leaned forward, eyes wide with pride. "Emma, that's so thoughtful. You saved all this for your nephews." "Thanks for the college fund," Leia said, smirking. Parents beamed proudly. I couldn't move. The room felt too small, the chandelier light too bright. My family was smiling over stolen federal property, and not one of them realized it. I managed to say, "Where did you get those?" Leia shrugged. "From your office. You really should change your lock, by the way, it's practically child's play." Grant chuckled nervously. She's got a point. If I found $500,000 sitting around, I'd probably do the same. Mom swatted his arm playfully. "Don't tease. Emma won't mind." I looked from face to face. No one met my eyes in that moment. It wasn't just about the folders. It was the years of being dismissed, reduced, misunderstood, the slow erosion of being the reliable one in a family that only noticed noise. Leia tucked the folders into her designer purse. "We'll make sure the money works for the family," she said. "You can thank me later." I pushed back my chair, the sound sharp in the silence. "Enjoy your dinner," I said softly. "I've got something to take care of." No one stopped me as I walked out. The night air outside was sharp enough to sting. I stood on the porch for a full minute, listening to laughter still leaking through the walls like it belonged to another world. My hands were steady when I pulled out my phone. Years of training had made it muscle memory. I didn't argue. I didn't go back inside. I just scrolled to the secure contact labeled AP Treasury Internal and pressed call. Carter, my supervisor. Answered voice clipped. "I need to report a breach." I said Category 1, Federal. "Property in civilian possession." The pause on the other end was short but heavy. "You're certain I saw the footage myself?" I replied. "Subject is known to me, relation sibling." The words felt surgical, detached, but my pulse thr under them. He exhaled. "Follow protocol. I'll loop in OG and financial crimes. Stay put until instructed." "Understood." I hung up, then forwarded the camera footage from my security feed to the encrypted channel. Leia's face filled the frame, smiling, picking the lock, lifting the folders. The proof was clean, undeniable. For the first time that evening I took a deep breath. The cold bit through my blazer, but it grounded me. Inside I could still hear silverware clinking, Mom's soft laugh, Yayla's voice carrying that same sugary triumph. I whispered to no one. "You really thought I'd stay silent forever?" Driving home, the road blurred into streaks of red and white. My phone buzzed again. Special Agent Maya Tors from the Treasury Inspector General's office. "Miss Carter, we received your report. The bonds are now flagged in the federal database. A team will respond tonight." "Copy that," I said. "They're at my parents' residence. I'll cooperate in full." Her voice softened just a fraction. "We know this isn't easy. It's necessary," I said. By the time I reached my apartment, the adrenaline had settled into something colder. I poured a glass of water, stared out at the city lights, and replayed the scene at dinner in my head. Their smiles, the casual betrayal. When I joined Treasury, I'd signed an oath, one that meant following the law above personal ties. I'd always thought it was a formality, something you'd never truly have to test until now. I checked the clock. 9:07 p.m. The response team would be on the move soon. In the quiet, I pictured the inevitable scene, the knock, the confusion, the realization. For years, my family had mistaken my silence for weakness. Tonight they'd learn what silence actually meant. Before going to bed, I sent one last message to Agent Tors. "I'll be at the residence in the morning to give my statement. Confirm when secure." Her reply came seconds later. "Understood, team en route." Now I put the phone face down, exhaled, and let the weight of the choice settle. It wasn't vengeance, it was accountability. And by morning the law would already be knocking on their door. The next morning the news broke before sunrise. My phone vibrated non-stop. Internal Treasury alerts, database confirmations, procedural approvals. The system had done what it was designed to do. The bonds were officially marked as stolen federal property. Their serial numbers had already triggered automated flags across every financial network in the country. But I didn't check the reports. I didn't need to. I knew exactly where the agents were going and exactly what they would find. By 7:00 p.m. that night, I was back in Philadelphia, pulling into my parents' driveway. The same Range Rover sat gleaming under the porch light, same laughter drifting through the dining room window. For a moment I thought absurdly that nothing had changed, that the world could still rewind 12 hours. I knocked once and walked in. Dinner was already underway. Leia looked radiant again, dressed in something silky, her hair perfectly curled. Mom turned, startled. "Emma, we didn't think you'd come back. I had unfinished business," I said quietly, taking the seat across from Leia. Her smirk flickered but didn't vanish. "Cooled off yet? Look, if it's about the bonds, don't freak out. I talked to an advisor. He said they're basically antique certificates worth maybe 10 grand. We'll cash them next week. Reinvest." "Stop." My voice cut through the table noise like glass snapping. "You're not cashing anything." Dad frowned. "Emma, honey, there's no need for that tone. There's every need." I said, "Those aren't antique certificates. They're bearer bonds issued by the United States. Treasury, Federal Securities, registered, tracked." Grant blinked. "Wait, federal, $500,000 worth," I said, "stolen from a classified safe." The air went still. Even the clock in the kitchen seemed to hold its breath. La laughed too loudly. You're joking, I'm not. Then what? You think I stole from the government, from my own sister? I don't think I said. I know. The footage is already in federal custody. Mom's hand trembled on her wine glass. Emma, sweetheart, surely there's a way to handle this privately. She didn't mean she broke into a secure residence, bypassed an electronic lock, opened a safe and took protected instruments. That's not a misunderstanding. Ila's voice rose desperate. They were just sitting there. You weren't using them. You never tell anyone what you do. How was I supposed to know that's what clearance means, Leia? I said you're not supposed to know. The sound that followed wasn't thunder, but it felt like it. A pounding knock shook the front door, 3 beats, then a woman's voice. Treasury Inspector General opened the door. Every head turned toward me. I stayed seated. That'll be for you. Leia froze. You didn't. I said nothing. Dad pushed back from the table. I'll see who it is. Before he reached the door, it opened to a group of agents in black jackets. Treasury OIG printed in yellow. At the front was Special Agent Maya Tor's credentials, out-tone clipped and calm. Evening, we have a federal warrant for Leia Whitman. Mom gasped. What? This is absurd. Agent Tor's eyes didn't waver. Miss Whitman, you are under arrest for theft of government property, defeating federal security measures and attempted securities fraud. Grant's fork clattered to his plate. Oh my God. Leia stood so fast her chair fell back. You can't be serious. She's my sister, which makes this worse, I said softly. 2 agents stepped forward. Leia tried to back away, but Torres spoke again, voice steady as iron. Hands where we can see them, Mom. Do something, Leia screamed. Mom just stared at her, pale and shaking. Agent Torres read her rights as the cuffs clicked. The metallic snap sounded louder than any argument I'd ever had in that house. Emma, Dad said, voice breaking. She's your sister. She's also a federal offender, I said, and I'm a sworn employee of the Treasury. If I hadn't reported her, I'd be charged as an accomplice. Torres picked up the purse Leia had dropped. Inside were the folders still sealed. She flipped one open, checked the serials and nodded. All 3 recovered. Good work reporting, Miss Carter. I met her eyes, just doing my job. They led Leia toward the door. She twisted back, mascara streaking, voice splintering. Emma, please, please don't let them take me. Tell them it was a mistake. I stood. It stopped being a mistake when you walked through my door. The screen door slammed behind them. Outside, red and blue lights danced across the snow-dusted yard. For a long time, no one spoke. The only sound was Mom's quiet sobbing. Dad finally whispered, how could you? I looked at him steady. How could you never believe me? He flinched. Uncle Joe cleared his throat, voice low but certain. She did the right thing. Grant sank back, staring at his untouched wine. Right or not, our lives are over. No, I said, just finally honest. Torres reappeared at the door. Miss Carter, the bonds will be logged at headquarters tonight. We'll need your formal statement in the morning. I'll be there, I said. She gave a single nod, then disappeared into the night. I turned back to my parents. They looked smaller somehow, like the truth had shaved years off them. You wanted to believe she could do no wrong, I said. Now you can see what that costs. No one answered. When the sirens faded, I walked outside. The air was cold and raw. From the driveway, I could still see the reflection of the flashing lights disappearing down the road. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel sorry. I just felt free, because for the first time the silence in that house wasn't mine to carry anymore. The trial came faster than anyone expected. Within weeks, the footage from my apartment was entered as evidence. High-defin, time-stamped, inescapable. Leia's face filled every frame, picking the lock, opening the safe, lifting the folders with that same triumphant smile. Her defense attorney tried everything, claimed she thought the documents were family assets, that she didn't understand their value. But the serial numbers and internal records tore that argument apart. In court, I sat behind the prosecution table, hands folded back straight. I wasn't there out of revenge. I was there to finish what duty had started. When the verdict came, guilty on all counts. Leia sobbed so hard she could barely breathe. The judge's voice stayed calm as he read the sentence. 12 years in federal prison, $500,000 in restitution, $150,000 in fines. Mom cried quietly in the gallery. Dad stared at the floor, lips pressed white. Grant never showed up the last few days of the trial. He'd already filed for divorce. When the guards led Leia out, she looked over her shoulder at me one last time. I didn't look away. I'd already said everything I needed to by choosing to tell the truth. After the sentencing, I stepped outside into the pale winter sunlight. The courthouse steps felt endless, but each one lightened the weight I'd carried for years. I thought of all the times I'd been invisible at that family table, dismissed, overruled, forgotten, and realized that doing what was right hadn't made me smaller. It had finally made me seen. 3 years later, I was promoted to senior supervisory analyst at Treasury. I led a team of 12 investigators, worked with agents from 6 countries, and earned a commendation for recovering nearly $300 million in stolen securities. At the ceremony, the secretary shook my hand and said, "Integrity like yours is what holds this department together." My parents didn't attend. I didn't expect them to. Leia still writes from prison, sometimes. Letters full of apologies that slide into requests, parole recommendations, money for restitution. I keep them in a drawer unopened. Some lessons have to be learned the hard way. People think justice feels loud and satisfying, like a movie ending with applause. It doesn't. It feels quiet. It feels like breathing again. 3 years later, my apartment feels different. Cleaner, quieter, unbothered. The new security system hums softly, the one Treasury paid to install after the case. Sometimes I stand by the window at night looking over the city lights, thinking about how silence used to hurt. Now it's peace. My parents still have a spare key, they've never used it. Maybe that's their version of distance or regret. Either way, I've stopped waiting for them to understand. People still ask if I ever wish I'd handled things differently. I tell them, no, you can forgive someone without excusing them. You can love your family and still draw a line they can never cross. If you've ever had to choose between family and what's right, I know how heavy that choice feels. But trust me, doing the right thing will never destroy you. It just reveals who was willing to destroy you first. If you enjoyed the story, hit like, drop a comment and subscribe for the next chapter.